Hello and welcome to another edition of Blind Eye Live. I'm your host, Blind Eye himself, Hunter King, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media, a small internet media firm. My gosh, I've copied Nick Recada's intro. Sort of. Anyway, welcome to the show today. It is a beautiful Friday, April 16th, and I've got some interesting stuff to talk about. We've got, of course, as I've been doing on the show, kind of going down some ESPN headlines, talking about the news of the day. I have some draft prospect opinions. Now that another pro day has happened for Justin Fields, all of a sudden now he's the favorite to start or to be the pick at number 3. So it seems that everyone who has an opinion on who the 49ers are going to draft at quarterback changes their opinion based on the latest pro day they have gone to. So if Kyle Trask has a second pro day and the 49ers go to it, he'll be the pick at number 3. Apparently, that's the logic we're going with here. So, anyway, my cat is behind me trying to scratch his face off. That's not true if he was actually trying to do that, but he is kicking up a storm back there. Anyway, so with that being said, let's get into the news, shall we? I wish I could. Maybe what I'll do in the future is I'm actually about to move to like my new space. When I get that set up differently, hopefully I'll be able to put the cam in a slightly different place. That way I'm not having to lean so far over, or at least out of frame to read. Because they put their headlines on the far right of the page. And then when I pull up articles, they've got this stupid little thing on the left side with more articles to go through, and I'm like, can I just have the article centered, please? Let's see. So we've had a response, or Aaron Donald's attorney has apparently let's see, aided accuser. Wait a second. Huh. Well, that'll be an interesting story to get into. Dwayne Wade apparently has an ownership stake in the Jazz. Let me check my camera here. Yeah, I'm still on camera. Cat. Now, all morning long. Sorry, people. I have to address my cat. All morning long, when I've been doing nothing or whatever, you decided to crawl into my closet and sleep. Now, as I'm doing something, you want my attention. You're becoming like Sydney's little dog. My sister. You get a. I'm gonna start shutting you out of my room. Let's see. The Coyotes, I don't care about. Hockey news, really. GM Texas respecting legal process on Watson. That's good. We should all respect that. 7-foot USC center Evan Mobley declares for the NBA draft. That's not a shock. Report complaint. I don't know what that's about. I don't want to get into. Let's see what this baseball story is here in a minute. Let's see what this is. Former NFL star, Marshawn Lynch. Gosh darn it. These autoplay commercials. Stop. Former NFL star Marshawn Lynch joins ownership group for USL's Oakland roots. Let's see. Okay, so I guess that's the second tier of American professional soccer. The USL is, yeah. So we've got MLS. USL would be like the AAA of MLS, or like their G League, whatever. An Oakland native, Lynch, 34, was a prominent advocate for the city during his 12-year NFL career, primarily with the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah. Okay, so cool. He's got an ownership stake in a soccer team that I didn't know existed until just now. All right, let's get into some bigger stories. Lawyer for Aaron Donald says, so yesterday on the show I talked about Aaron Donald apparently being accused of assault at a nightclub a couple nights ago. Aaron Donald says, or lawyer for Aaron Donald says, video evidence refutes assault claim against Ramstar. Well, as bad as that guy had been beaten, it's possible that because Donald was the most recognizable, maybe he just thought, maybe he remembered things wrong and believed he was the one who assaulted him. Let's get into the story. A lawyer representing Los Angeles Rams defensive lineman Aaron Donald says there is video evidence refuting a claim by DeVincent Spriggs that Donald physically assaulted him outside of a Pittsburgh area nightclub. Casey White, an attorney hired by Donald to represent him following the allegations levied against him Wednesday, told ESPN that Spriggs, swung a bottle at Donald that grazed his head as he ducked before other people surrounding Donald stepped in. As he ducks, somebody from behind grabs him to stop him from interacting with this guy, Mr. Spriggs, so he holds Aaron back in a sense, White said. At that point, that's when other people come to Aaron's aid and defend him by removing, so to speak, Mr. Spriggs from the area where he is punched and he is fighting. It's a mutual fight at this point between other individuals who Aaron does not really know. White said that they have obtained 5 witness accounts and that Donald eventually helped pull people away from Spriggs. Well, if there's video evidence of that, then Donald's completely exonerated in all this. Although, I wonder if there's video of what led a bottle to be swung at his head. Aaron actually runs over to Spriggs and starts pulling people off of this guy, White said. He's trying to get these kids off Spriggs. He gets at least 2 or 3 people off of Spriggs, and at that point in time, somebody grabs Aaron and says, "This is not a good situation. Let's get the heck out of here." I'm sure they said heck. An attorney representing Spriggs filed a criminal complaint with Pittsburgh. Yes, I talked about this. Okay, so this just goes in. This is where they attached the story from yesterday onto the end. Oh, wait, now we got more stuff. According to Hollis, Spriggs accidentally bumped into him. Donald initially... So, let's see. According to Hollis, Spriggs actually bumped into Donald, and the incident ensued inside the nightclub that caused both parties to be asked to leave. White said that Spriggs dug his elbow into Donald's back, which Donald initially brushed off, thinking it likely was someone he knew. Now, that wasn't part of the story yesterday. That wasn't part of this yesterday. That last line. He turned around, and it's this Mr. Spriggs, and Aaron goes, "What's up?" And Mr. Spriggs starts yelling belligerently, "Did I mean to? Did I mean to?" He keeps repeating. It's kind of nonsensical, but he keeps yelling, "Did I mean to?" It's apparent to Aaron, and it's apparent to all the witnesses, that Spriggs is intoxicated, White said. Okay, so this now is... That's interesting how they framed this, because, well, the paragraph before it starts with, according to Hollis, and that whole paragraph is the same as yesterday, except that last sentence. And then it goes into something from Donald's attorney, which, in terms of writing an article and telling a story, okay, this lines up, but maybe they should have started this with Donald's attorney, White, says that at this point, and then, or something like that. But anyway, I get why they did that, because I was confused for a second. White said Spriggs was then escorted out of the establishment, which he described as a private party in somebody's apartment above a business bar area. Huh. According to White, Donald and a colleague left the party shortly after, where they encountered Spriggs in the back alleyway off the exit. White said he does not anticipate that the Pittsburgh police will file charges against Donald. So you mean to tell me that there was an altercation inside, and then, based on Donald's party's explanation, this guy was waiting for them in a back alley just outside the exit? This is interesting. So did he swing the bottle at him inside, or did he wait and swing the bottle at him while they were outside? Because it sounds like, because this, yesterday it said it started with them bumping into each other, which it says at the up top. See, they described the incident like where the fight happens, I guess. But that was after Mr. Spriggs bumped into Donald or whatever. Spriggs was escorted out. See, the story yesterday was they were both escorted out. Now it's like the story from Donald's attorney is that Spriggs was escorted out, and they left later, and he was outside waiting. Huh. And there's apparently video evidence. Yeah, so this is the end of yesterday's. Okay. So this is interesting. So we have now the defense, or Donald's account from his attorney, and it's far more detailed than Spriggs' account. We'll probably get an update on this. I'll probably update on this on Monday. Well, if I can close that. Let's move on. Dwayne Wade buys ownership stake in the Utah Jazz, wants hands-on role. That is a super well-run organization. I don't know what he wants by a hands-on role, but the way they operate, the Jazz have done a really good job of building that team, and they make smart personnel moves. I would hate for him to get some hands-on role and screw that up. Also, it's kind of interesting that he wants to take an active role in that franchise in the region, considering he's from Chicago and spent his entire career in Miami. I wonder if he approached either or Miami's owner or Chicago's owner about buying minority stakes in those franchises before this. Wade, an 8-time All-NBA player with the Miami Heat, is the latest of several Hall of Fame level players with NBA ownership stakes, including Grant Hill, and Grant Hill's part of the Hawks ownership group. Shaq is part of the Kings ownership group, yeah. Which is also kind of interesting that he's an owner for one of the minority owners for the Kings, but he's also one of the biggest NBA media people. Doesn't seem like a conflict of interest or anything. And Charlotte Hornets majority owner Michael Jordan. Magic Johnson previously had a 4% stake in the Los Angeles Lakers. This goes way beyond the dream I had to just play basketball in the NBA. Wade told ESPN. Seen Shaq do it in Sacramento, Grant Hill do it in Atlanta. I've seen Jordan do it in Charlotte. Yeah. Also, kind of interestingly enough, all three of those teams, for the most part, stink and have stunk during those periods. Not necessarily blaming those guys, except for Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is absolutely to blame for the Hornets being mediocre for so long. It's going to be, let's see, if this partnership is going to be anything like my relationship is with Ryan, there are going to be a lot of things that I want to be involved in. Guess these guys go back or something somehow. Fortunately, people in my community don't get the opportunities, so I don't take it lightly to have this opportunity. Of course. To make real change, this is where you have to be, at the top. And Ryan knows that. I'm thankful to him, and I know too that I bring a lot to this partnership outside of just my basketball knowledge and skills. Wade, 39, met Smith on a San Clementine, California golf course shortly after his retirement from playing in 2019, and they became fast friends. Wade wanted to understand about Smith's tech empire, including his company Qualtrics? Yeah, Qualtrics, and calls him a mentor. Smith, 42, raised the idea of Wade joining the ownership group upon completing a $1.66 billion purchase of the Jazz in October. So this has been in the works. The NBA has a bylaw that ownership stakes can be no less than 1% of the team, but Wade's financial investment in the franchise is not immediately clear. Because what's 1% of $1.66 billion? That'd be at least 1.66 million? No. I think that would be at least 10.6. Yeah. I think that'd be $10.6 million. So that's, I mean, he should have that kind of money, but he joins a small ownership group that includes Smith and his wife, Ashley, investor and Excel partner Ryan Sweeney. Actually, I feel like I know that name from somewhere. Atlassian co-founder Mike Cannon Brooks, and the Miller family, which previously owned the team. Okay, so the previous owners still are minority owners. Well, anyway, so Dwayne Wade is now a part owner of the Utah Jazz. Cool. Let's see. Okay, so this goes back to the New York Mets stories from the offseason. So report complaints against New York Mets staffers not acted on, 2 more accusers of inappropriate conduct. Yeah, I'm not getting into that story. I'm covering enough of that stuff. And I just don't care enough about Major League Baseball. So let's hit up some NFL headlines real quick. Let's see. So it's Pats. Jackson signs Tinder after breakout season. J.C. Jackson's breakout season? How many breakout seasons has he had? Because he's a really, really good cornerback. Chiefs Buccaneers open with highest win totals. I guess win totals, that's either betting projections or ESPN statistical projections. Okay, and now we're into... Yeah, that's stuff I've already covered. So, actually, let's hit this. Kansas City Chiefs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers open with highest NFL win totals ahead of 17-game regular season. What does that mean? That still doesn't tell me whose win totals. First 17-game regular season have opened with the highest win totals at Caesars Sportsbook by William Hill, which, as of yesterday, the NFL has announced a betting partnership with Caesars, FanDuel, and DraftKings. So they now have licensed betting partners. I'm going to go ahead and open up the NBA stuff, but I'm going to cover the NFL. Let's see. So let's see what this is. Source: New England Patriots cornerback J.C. Jackson signs Tinder after. Now that's a standout season. That's different than breakout. Let's see. Cornerback J.C. Jackson, who was second in the NFL last season with 9 interceptions, officially signed his second round restricted free agent tender. I can't believe they didn't go with a first round tender, because if I was another team right now, if all I had to do to get that dude was send a second round pick to the Patriots, I'd do it and pay him if I really need a corner, even this offseason. The tender locks Jackson into a 1-year, $3.38 million contract for this season, and then he is scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent next offseason. The deadline for teams to sign restricted free agents to offer sheets is April 23rd, and others around the NFL could soon be following Jackson's lead. Green Bay tight end Robert Tonyan, who was also tendered at the second round level after catching 11 touchdowns last season, is among the most notable. Tonyan came out of nowhere last season, by the way. One line of thinking was that players such as Jackson and Tonyan might draw interest from other teams, which could have signed them to offer sheets and then would have surrendered a second round draft pick if the player's team declined to match. That would make more sense for Jackson than Tonyan, because, I mean, not like it's just, you play with an elite quarterback, it's easy to catch 11 touchdowns, but to a degree, I think Tonyan definitely benefited from playing with Aaron Rodgers, and I don't know, I don't know if he's really that good. But with salary cap space at a premium across the NFL, there hasn't been much traction with the restricted free agent market this season. Jackson, 25, has been a success story in New England after initially joining the team as an undrafted free agent out of Maryland in 2018. He has played in 45 regular season games with 22 starts and totaled 17 interceptions. Like he's came into the season as a well-regarded cornerback. Like, no doubt. But, I mean, a 9-interception season, I mean, that more than doubled his career reception total up to that point. I mean, that was year 3 for him, so. And he's only 25, so it's not like some of these guys who finish rookie contracts or whatever ended up at, like, you know, which there is a limit on restricted, because, like, first-round picks and stuff, they can't become restricted free agents because they have too much service time. It might be that you only become a restricted free agent if you only have 3 years of NFL experience. I think like second round picks or guys who get drafted in like the second, third round who have like 4-year deals, I don't think they qualify necessarily for restricted free agency. So, but he's 25, and you get a lot of guys who end up as restricted free agents are those kind of late round picks or undrafted guys. And so, but a lot of those guys typically are guys that some people are good players, but a lot of draft people think they're too old because they played like 4 years or redshirted a year and played 4 years in college, so they're like 23 or even 24 as rookies or whatever. So they hit restricted free agency and they're like, sometimes they're 27 years old or about to turn 27. Maybe they're 26, but at 25, like he'll be hitting unrestricted free agency as a 26-year-old free agent. And considering most contracts now are 4 to 5 years, you're basically getting probably that guy's prime before you start or before he potentially falls off. So no real big news since yesterday, except Anthony Davis has been cleared to practice. That's good. That means he'll be back soon. Anything else interesting here? Oh, that's right. So the Pacers and Jazz are playing like a matinee game. It's in the first quarter. Or maybe the second quarter started. Let's see. No, into the first. Let's see. So right now you've got Sabonis, or wait. Yeah, Sabonis got 11 points. Malcolm Brogdon's got 11 points. That's just in one quarter, by the way. Six points from Karis LeVert. Good to see Karis LeVert back healthy. Edmund Sumner got the start along with Justin Holiday. Yeah, the Pacers are dealing with some injuries right now because you've got, let's see. Yeah, like right now, TJ Warren's still out. You got Aaron Holiday on the bench. Jeremy Lamb at least is back healthy after his ACL that cost him pretty much all of last year. Let's see. And Miles Turner's out injured. They're playing a real small lineup because they've got their starting lineup. They had Justin Holiday and Karis LeVert as their forwards and Sabonis at center. So they're basically playing like, I mean, Holiday and LeVert are like wings, like shooting guard, small forward type wings. So they're really playing like 4 guard types, like solely perimeter types. And then their bench, they have 3. The only guys who've played so far are TJ McConnell, Aaron Holiday, and Jeremy Lamb. Their most seasoned big on the bench is Gogo Badatse, and then I don't know who this Brissett guy is. I feel like I remember him briefly. It looks like they might be checking into the game, those two. But, and beyond them, the other guys who haven't played are all listed as shooting guards, so right now they're up 8 on the Jazz, but I don't expect that to stay that way. as this game goes along. Jazz have pretty even scoring across the board from their players. Their leading scorer with 8 points is Bojan Bogdanovic right now. And the Jazz are at full strength, and they added Irasan Ilyasova to their roster. So they are without Derek Favors today, it looks like. I guess he's out hurt, and I missed that. But and then Ingles and Clarkson has 5 points off the bench. Niang has 3. Ingles hasn't even shot yet in his 8 minutes. I'm guessing that Brantley's going to be their backup center today because, once again, they've got a bunch of wings. Or Ilyasova, maybe Ilyasova. Well, he's kind of an undersized center, but he does give you 5 out. So, second quarter started in that game. I'm not gonna follow this game. I just wanted to check in on it. So anyway, that's pretty much all for the news. So before I get into the draft primer, let's see. So then I went. Okay, cool. So before I get into the draft primer, I'm doing pretty good on time today. Sorry, I'm checking my clock or my time on. Yeah, I'm doing really well. So Justin Fields this week had a pro day. A second pro day, and the 49ers were there. And now Mac Jones, everybody's been talking Mac Jones is the guy. He's been the betting favorite. Now Justin Fields is the betting favorite to be the number 3 pick. Because he was the favorite to be the third, or maybe even there was a debate about whether he or Zach Wilson was the number 2 quarterback. Although that for most people, seems to be kind of settled that Zach Wilson is the number 2 guy and that he will go number 2 to the Jets. But now Justin Fields is the consensus not necessarily the consensus, but now he's taken back over as the favorite for the 3rd pick. Which, as soon as that trade happened, everyone assumed that the 49ers were moving up for Justin Fields. Then, of course, they went to Alabama's pro day instead of Ohio State's, which kind of makes sense because Alabama has the most, or probably has the most draftable players in this draft. I mean, you look at guys who could go in the first round. Ohio State has Justin Fields and Justin Fields. Whereas Alabama has Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris, maybe Christian Barmore, maybe Landon Dickerson, Patrick Surtain. That's 7 dudes. So, not that, they would pick anything other than a quarterback, but you go to a pro day for more than just to see whatever quarterback is there. And even down the board. Because Ohio State has several draftable guys. Joe Togiai, who I think they could use an interior defensive lineman. I talked about that. And him maybe being an option for them at 102. But Bama has Christian Barmore, who could slide into the 2nd round. Sorry. You've got what's his name? It's something Ray, I think. Is his last name, like LeBrian Ray, I think, is also in this draft. A guy who could go, well, physically speaking, I think he has the tools to be like a day 2 guy, but there are some questions about his production, but that seems to be the case with a lot of Alabama interior linemen. Typically, most of their guys are tasked with occupying blocks and making life easier on the linebackers and whoever the main penetrating defensive lineman is, which this year it was Christian Barmore. in previous years that was, um, Quinnen Williams or Jonathan Allen. But you have guys who are more of that, who played more of a role for Alabama, who went on to have like productive seasons and be very successful. Jaron Reed, Deshaun Hand, another guy who's a first round pick, Deron Payne, although he made plays in big moments. Damian Square. Man, I could list off a bunch of guys. But anyway, I think LaBryan Ray would be a great day 3 pick for somebody. Because I believe he's in this draft. And his physical profile is great. Another guy that I didn't mention, Deshaun Hand, who went in the 3rd round last year. Or not Deshaun Hand, Raekwon Davis. People question his production, but he looks like he's going to be a solid player. So, anyway, I like LaBryan Ray. But there are tons of interior guys who could go of all different types that you could get rounds 3 and later. So, but anyway, back to the whole thing about the pro days. People made that big deal about San Francisco going to Alabama's pro day. But when you look at it, I mean, there's just so much talent on that defense and offense that's draftable this year. Although, I mean, you've got Alex and some other things that the 49ers could target, like interior defensive line. You've got Alex Leatherwood, who can play tackle or kick inside the guard. You have, was it Deontay Brown? Or I think it's Deontay Brown, who I think he played right tackle for them, but he projects much better as a guard. Although he's huge. Maybe he could play right tackle, but they don't necessarily need that in for him. But if they slid Brown in at right guard, Alabama has talent at every position group. You've also got Dylan Moses, who he just didn't look the same last year after his ACL injury, but you give him a second year back and a full off season where he's healthy and everything, he might be better in the NFL than he was. But before that ACL tear, this guy, he was a dynamic linebacker on tape. He's a guy who could go in the 3rd, 4th round still. So that's something I said the 49ers could target in the middle rounds, was an inside linebacker. So anyway, I would say that the 49ers just chose to go to Alabama's pro day. And I mentioned when talking about this, when it happened, that it was an overreaction anyway, because the reason you go to a quarterback's pro day is just to see him throw in person. If you're the biggest knock on Jones compared to Fields, and why everyone has, or so many people have Fields rated higher, is because Fields has incredible arm talent. You see that on tape. It's obvious. Jones, there are questions about his arm strength. Although, I think that's a little overblown. Sometimes guys who throw with really, really good touch and choose to throw with touch over zip on different throws, they get dinged for their arm strength. But there were multiple throws last year on short and intermediate routes where Jones got the ball out hot and in a hurry to his targets. Does he have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes' arm strength? No. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have like a Joe Flacco or Derek Carr arm. Because Derek Carr, even though he's tended to throw short a lot of his career, actually has pretty good zip on his throws. I think Jones has average to above average arm strength. Baker Mayfield, everyone was on about Baker Mayfield's arm strength. Then at his pro day, everyone's like, man, he really put zip on it. It's like, yeah, if you watched not that I watched every throw, but I watched enough games at Oklahoma to see that he had zip on the ball. I think Jones is a really, really good quarterback. But there is somewhat of a baseline for like what kind of traits you need at the position. Arm strength is not the only thing because it didn't get Paxton Lynch. Arm strength and athleticism didn't get past Paxton Lynch anywhere. Sorry, I'm still congested. Some sounds are still hard to articulate. But like I said, Paxton Lynch, great athlete, awesome arm, not a good quarterback. Brock Osweiler, big dude. His arm wasn't as big as his body, and I mean, those traits didn't make a good quarterback. You can have all the arm talent in the world and suck at quarterback. And even get paired with a good coaching staff and fail. There's a lot of things that go into making a quarterback. You can be with bad coaching staffs and still become a great quarterback. Like, Matt Stafford was, not that every Detroit coach and every Detroit offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach were bad, because that's not the case. He did work with some good people. But Matt Stafford wasn't always in like this great development spot, although he did have Calvin Johnson. But he and Calvin Johnson made stuff out of nothing a lot because they were great. Well, and Matt Stafford is still a great quarterback. You look at, you look at David Carr. David Carr had, he had a crappy offensive line, but he had Andre Johnson to throw to. The offensive scheme wasn't really bad during David Carr's years, but that didn't make him a good quarterback. I do think that the offensive line, outside of when Tony Boselli was healthy, which was not often, like basically the entire line was crap. That guy was put in a bad situation, so it's still kind of unfair to really go hard on David Carr, because I think he was given a really bad situation. So maybe he's not a good example of what I'm thinking of. We'll see with Daniel Jones this season if he turns out. I actually think he's had a decent developmental situation. Personally, like the offense he's in, or he's been in, offenses have been pretty quarterback friendly. He's had good weapons during his time as the quarterback there. But we're going into year 3, and he's now got Kenny Golladay. They improved the offensive line last year. It should take another step forward. Andrew Thomas should be better in year 2. He has, Barkley's going to be back healthy after missing all of last year. Like, Jones will have no excuses. Like, sometimes good, and Robert Griffin III was in a really good position until he got hurt at the end of his rookie year. And then he got ruined because they rushed him back. Well, and he shouldn't have played in that playoff game. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Mike Shanahan killed Robert Griffin's career. So anyway, but with all the Justin Fields, Mac Jones drama, we'll see on draft day who they draft. A lot of people have different reasons. I'd rather take Trey Lance over Justin Fields. Justin Fields is my number 5 quarterback in this draft. I think out of all 5 of the quarterbacks, he has the furthest to go with the mental side of the game. I think he's got great mental toughness and physical toughness. That game against Clemson, he got hurt during that game and he continued to just ball out. He had an amazing game. That Clemson defense was super overrated last year. And people were talking up Fields against Alabama. He was pretty meh against Alabama. He did make some plays, and he was hurt, but he was totally healthy against Northwestern. Northwestern's defense wasn't as good as, or I would argue it's not as good as Alabama's was last year. Indiana's defense, super creative. Now, I might give it that Indiana and Northwestern's defensive coordinators and head coaches maybe had a little more advanced defensive scheme than Bama, maybe. But Bama's defense did a really good job against Ohio State. Like, Fields didn't wow me in that game. And people can use the injury excuse all they want. And I'm not saying necessarily it's an excuse, but I grew up watching Steve McNair play with like broken ribs, bruised sternums, or like, a sternum that hadn't completely necessarily healed yet, finish a game out with a cracked, fractured sternum. Like, there was a game against the Chiefs in, I want to say it was 2001, maybe. Somewhere in the early 2000s, where they listed how many injuries he had on the injury report. It was like 17. It was like 17 different like injuries, including broken ribs. And I think it was turf toe was one of them. And he had something wrong with his non-throwing hand and his non-throwing shoulder. During the game, he took a hit, and there was like, you could see blood on like the chest of his jersey. And it's just like, this guy, and he played well, in those games when he was hurt. Like, he was truly a gladiator. I'm sorry, guys. I'm stuffed up. I'm not running today, but there's still some congestion. I'm feeling way better today than I was yesterday, though. So, anyway, my issues with Justin Fields come down to, and some people say it's not as big a deal. Some people think it is a big deal. I tend to trend towards it is a big deal, personally. That, sorry, I'm checking, make sure something lines up. He tends to get stuck on reads or react late to, when he makes good reads, he makes decisions late. And that's the difference between Mac Jones and Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. Not that all of these guys are perfect, but for the most part, they read the field quickly. And Lawrence didn't look great against Ohio State. And he looked meh against LSU in the championship game, in 2019. That LSU defense was really, really good, though. And got a lot of pressure on him. Ohio State was able to get a lot of pressure on him as well this year. So, and this was, out of all of the teams Trevor Lawrence has been on, I would argue this was his least talented team that he's played with. Because there's not a single Clemson player other than him who I think is a sure, like, there's no other Clemson player who's a sure first-round pick this year. Etienne likely goes in the late first, but it's not a given because he's a running back, though he is a first-round talent. Amari Rodgers is a really solid receiver. I don't see him going before before round 3. I like him a lot, but he's not like, he's nowhere near the most talented receiver in this class. Although I think he's probably one of the safest picks in the draft, but I think there are a lot of players that I would consider fairly safe bets, especially if they go to teams that use them correctly and don't expect them to be something they're not. So, with that being said, I think Lawrence and DJ, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name without it being in front of me, but DJU, or DJ Oog, whatever, their backup who started a couple games for Lawrence. Those guys did a lot with less talent than has been on the field for Clemson. In my personal opinion, um, in like the last half decade or so. So, like, I think Lawrence elevated that team. Whereas I think Fields piloted a really, really stellarly talented Ohio State team. Because if he didn't decide to stay for his senior year, Chris Olave was a first round talent for sure. But I mean, I guess other than that, like, well, Wyatt Davis before his injury, a lot of people had him in the late first round. But because of the injury he picked up in the Bama game and some tape study, he slid back to about a second, third rounder. Oh, sorry, second or third round pick. Now, I would honestly be a little shocked if Wyatt didn't go like top 75. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he went in the late second at this point. I think that's probably where he goes. Give me 1 second. That's the first time I've had to blow my nose all day. So, anyway, so I don't know. Evaluating quarterbacks is hard, and in a class with guys as talented as this, it's rare that you get so many guys who are as prolific and as physically talented as this class has. Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, and Lance are all well above average athletes for the position. Like, I would say that they all range from great to exceptional athletes at the position. And all have shown really great efficiency and really great things on tape. Like, the one thing Fields has probably, and Lance has this too, and Wilson's pretty athletic in his own right. Like, they have far more, all three of them have more quick twitch athleticism than Lawrence. Not that Lawrence can't get moving. And like at top speed, he actually has great top end speed. It just takes him longer to get there than Fields, Lance, and Wilson. They have much better escapability, like in short area quickness. Like Fields is really good at just, you know what? There is a lane to run and I can get 15, 20 yards here. I'm just going to take it. And Fields can create even more yardage and he's built really well to do that. So, and that's something I do like about Fields. At the same time, though, I've seen some plays where he has bailed out and he's gotten yardage, but he actually missed an open receiver that would have saved him from having to take a hit and would have gotten as many or more yards quicker. So there is that. Fields is not a bad prospect, and some of my friends think that I think Fields is a bad quarterback prospect, and I don't think that. I just think that that he has, out of those top 5 guys, I actually think he has the most glaring weaknesses to work on that will take the most time to work on. Because I think that some of the comparisons people make with Trey Lance and Josh Allen are warranted, but I think his decision making is way better. I think he's more accurate at the same stage than Allen, because he's younger than Allen was when Allen came out. And I think he's a more dynamic runner than Allen as well. But I think he's no further away than Fields is. And in some ways, I actually think he's further along than Fields because of the offense he comes from. So, I think, or because Ohio State, and to a degree, every offense to some degree is made to make life easier on the quarterback in some ways. especially any offense designed around young quarterbacks. But Ohio State made it really easy on their quarterback. And in some ways, Clemson made things really easy for Trevor Lawrence. Whereas in a lot at like BYU, Zach Wilson, he was carrying that team. And he had some good talents around him, like their running back's pretty good. Their left tackle, I think, is easily worth a third-round pick. He's not quite in my top 10 tackles, but he's real close. He's like right on that kind of bubble for it. I may have listed him in the top 10 at one point, but I've moved him down to like either 11 or 12 right now. Ugh. And then his wide receiver, I think, is also in this draft, and he's a day 3 guy. I would say if the Jets draft Wilson, they should draft. I can't believe I've forgotten the name of his top wide receiver from last year, but they were roommates. They have ready-made chemistry. That would be a cheap way to, I think, to bolster their receiving core in the draft. If they decide they don't want to draft a receiver early, or even if they do draft a receiver early. So, with that being said, I think Wilson had to carry more of the offense. And yes, Alabama's weapons made things easier for Mac Jones. But you could also, I think, all the arguments people made for Joe Burrow, are making against Mac Jones this year, could equally apply to Joe Burrow last year. Joe Burrow is a little more athletic and has a little more escapability. That I'm not denying. But other than that, he played behind a great offensive line. He had the best receiving weapons in the country, or arguably the best receiving weapons in the country. He had a first-round caliber running back. He had a great defense. And he had a NFL-level offensive coordinator. Just like Mac Jones. So, but those didn't penalize Joe Burrow, and I don't think they should penalize Mac Jones. And one of the big things on Joe Burrow last year, there were a lot of people who were like, yeah, but Joe Burrow kind of has only like an average arm. Like, his arm strength's not impressive. And he was the number 1 overall pick, and he looked fine before he got hurt. What was it, week 11 that Burrow got hurt? Week 10, week 11 that he got injured? So, I don't know. I'm kind of ride or die with Mac Jones at this point as my third quarterback. And that's the other thing. I'm not even telling people he's the number 1 quarterback. I'm just saying I like him better than Fields and as much as I like Trey Lance. And I like them for different reasons. And I think people are severely overrating athleticism at this point. I'm sorry. Yeah, you know what? Lamar Jackson won an MVP and he can run all over the place. But guess what? If I'm not mistaken, he has a losing record in the playoffs. It's like he hasn't proven that he can win big yet. That doesn't mean that I don't like Lamar Jackson either. But he's still a limited passer. And that, to a large degree, people could say whatever they want about their scheme and this and that. Part of the reason they don't throw the ball more is because when they do throw the ball that much, they lose. Lamar Jackson threw the ball all over the place in that loss to the Titans. He put up a lot of yards. But he also made some mistakes. That and the Titans defense just made opportune plays and stopped a historically great fourth down short yardage offense, and just kept stuffing them on fourth and short when they would go for it. There were a lot of things that went into that, but Aaron Rodgers is over here elevating Robert Tonyan to an 11 touchdown season. And yes, he's more of a veteran, but Patrick Mahomes elevated players around him too at an early stage in his career. Heck, Josh Allen in year 2, John Brown almost had 1,000 yards, or he might have had 1,000 yards receiving in 2019. Cole Beasley looked really good in 2019, and Allen was still pretty imperfect as a passer. Last year, Allen was throwing the ball all over the place. And they had a late round pick. I think he was a late rounder, not undrafted. Gabriel Davis, late in the year, was making some big plays for him. Good quarterbacks elevate the talent around him, and so far, Jackson isn't consistently elevating his receiving talent. Mahomes has great athleticism, but what makes him special is his ability to read and react during the game, and his incredible arm strength and accuracy along with that arm strength. And he does have great talent around him. And for as athletic as Deshaun Watson is, and, special, same with Dak Prescott, those guys haven't made like a bunch of deep playoff runs yet. I mean, look at the greatest quarterback of all time. Or heck, three of maybe the top 5 greatest of all time. Brady and Manning are not great athletes, in terms of straight line speed and wiggle. They have 9 Super Bowl wins between them. And I think 15 appearances between them in the Super Bowl. Something like that. Drew Brees has a Super Bowl win as well. And I would put him in that Joe Burrow, Mac Jones, maybe closer to Mac Jones kind of mobility. It's about the mental part of the position, and if you're not elite at the mental part of the game, you can't win a Super Bowl. I say elite at the mental part of the game. I mean, Trent Dilfer has a Super Bowl ring, but I would say that Trent Dilfer actually is a really smart NFL quarterback. And it took him a while to get there. He wasn't as intelligent early in his career. But by the time he got to the Ravens, he knew exactly what he needed to do to win games. And he did it. So I just think we're overrating athleticism. It is a great tool to have. But Michael Vick didn't go to a Super Bowl, didn't play in a Super Bowl. Didn't win a Super Bowl. Donovan McNabb could have won a Super Bowl if he wasn't such a jerk and stuck up and petty with his own teammates. Cordell Stewart wasn't super successful as a quarterback. I mean, we have all these guys, and they, at the end of the day, who's coming home with the Super Bowls for the most part? Who's the most athletic quarterback to win a Super Bowl? Is it Patrick Mahomes? Is it Roger Staubach? Because off the top of my head, those are the 2 most athletic quarterbacks that... Oh, and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's one. So those are the 3 most athletic quarterbacks to win Super Bowls. it's about functional mobility. Because, like, who's the fourth then? Aaron Rodgers, and then fifth is Ben Roethlisberger. It's not about how fast you can run or how many sacks you can dodge. It's about how well you can manipulate the defense. It's about how much time you can buy without having to take your eyes up from downfield and keep yourself in a quality throwing position. I actually care far more about like the whole arm strength bit than I do about how fast a guy's 40 is and how many guys he's juked out in his career. Can the guy manipulate and move around the pocket and keep his eyes downfield when things become a little wishy-washy? Can he step up and move in the pocket and buy time without having to run and take his eyes away from downfield or get himself out of a place where he can quickly, like, instantaneously be in throwing position? That's what matters. So, with that being said, I'm going to jump into the draft primer. Boom. For today. So let's get our first depth chart out here. Let's see, where is Jaguars? There we are. Well, if it'll let me, there we go. Well, I thought. Here we go. Uno. I'll tell you why I'm having to blow my nose on the stream more than I do the rest of the day. It's because I have these overhead lights on, and they are kind of warm. I'm gonna see if I can orient this real quick. Let's see. My cat is just laid out. I slightly missed it though. He was like rolled over on his, like, completely on his back with his paws in the air. It's just so funny. So yeah, so let's get into it. So the Jaguars roster. Let me move this back a bit. So I like their receiving core to a degree as it is. DJ Chark looks like a legit number one. Marvin Jones is a great veteran presence at receiver, and Chenault is a great, like, catch and run, and kind of gadgety playmaker. Like, you can line him up in the backfield. He can and give him some snaps, run him on jet sweeps, but they have a nice top three here. And then behind them, I like Colin Johnson as a big outside threat that they drafted in the 5th round last year. Contested catch kind of guy. They've got Philip Dorsett as kind of like a backup speedster, field stretcher type. They signed Terry Godwin. They have Terry Godwin out of Georgia, who actually a lot of people were kind of high on as a potential mid-round receiver until he ran like kind of a really slow 40 time for a guy who's kind of undersized. And then they've got former Florida receiver Josh Hammond, who's kind of more of a return specialist, as well as Jamal Agnew, another return specialist. Really good return man, actually. That doesn't preclude them from particularly drafting a receiver, but I like their top 5. Let's see, on the offensive line, they franchised Cam Robinson, which he's getting a little overpaid, I think. But, you know, when you look at their interior line, Andrew Norwell, they're paying him a lot of money. Hopefully he stays healthy all year. Brandon Linder, same thing. He's a really, really good center when he's healthy. AJ Cann's a solid guard. Then they have Jawan Taylor, who they got in the second round 2019, and a lot of people thought might even be a first round pick that year, a top 10 pick even. I was surprised he fell as far as he did. So they could draft offensive line, but I don't think they have to at the start. And they have some decent backups like Tyler Shatley, decent backup center. I loved the Ben Bartch draft pick last year in the 4th round. He can play guard or tackle. Will Richardson is a solid swing tackle in my opinion, or solid, okay to solid. At tight end, they have Tyler Eifert coming back for another year. They've got Chris Manhartz, who, I don't really know if he's really, if that's your second tight end, I don't necessarily like that. Tyler Davis, 6th rounder last year. They could, and then James O'Shaughnessy, who they reclaimed off waivers from New England. He used to play there, or if I'm not mistaken, he had been there before. I don't know. I feel like they probably should draft a tight end in this draft. In terms of running backs, you've got James Robinson, who was a breakout star last year after going undrafted. You have Raquel Armistead, who's a 5th round pick in 2019 that a lot of people expected to be the starter. But I think you could upgrade on him. They have Carlos Hyde as a 3rd string running back who, man, I hate how it'll just, because of how ads shift, it moves stuff. Hyde's a pretty good 3rd running back. But yeah, I mean, they could draft a running back, but I don't think it's necessarily, I don't know if it's necessary. They picked up C.J. Beathard. They still have Jake Luton, who they drafted last year in the 6th round, and they have Gardner Minshew on the roster. Minshew is an awesome backup option, and having Beathard as your 3rd quarterback, once they draft Lawrence with the number 1 pick, the Jaguars are going to have a awesome quarterback room. When it comes to the defense, out on the edges, you've got Josh Allen, and wow, they're slating Jihad Ward to start right now. At your own risk. Then you got Caleb Von Chason backing up Allen, and Dwayne Smoot backing up Ward. I'd rather have Chason or even Smoot start, but Ward's more of a rundown end anyway. You would see Smoot and Chason most likely across from Allen anyway. And then Adam Gotsis is their 5th defensive tackle or defensive end, which Gotsis has tools, but he's never really put them together. And he could play inside on kind of pass rush defensive tackle on passing downs. Interior of the line, you've got former 1st round pick Taven Bryan going into year 4. You've got
You've got Devon Hamilton, who was a third-round pick last year. He turned out to be a solid pick. Not really. Doug Costin, Malcolm Brown was a really good pickup. They traded for him traded for him, got him from New Orleans. He'll be great as a rotational defensive tackle. That improves that position for them a lot, actually.
Take a minute. Okay. I'm good now. I'm good. Have I been on camera? Like, yeah. Let me slide that back a little more. Yeah, you can see a little bit behind the scenes there that how close I have to sit to the TV. Because having like a screen reader on would be super distracting while I'm doing this. For me. So anyway, I feel like defensive line, particularly like interior, they still could probably use another guy because if Taven Bryan, I don't know if they've turned down Taven Bryan's 5th-year option yet or not, but I don't know if he's been worth it yet. So then at linebacker, you've got Miles Jack, Joe Schobert, and Leon Jacobs as your starters. And then behind them, you've got Shaq Quarterman, who I thought was a really good draft pick last year. Damian Wilson, who they signed away from Kansas City. And Roy Robertson Harris, who they signed away from Chicago. I actually kind of like their linebacker group. And then behind that, you've got Dakota Allen, Quincy Williams, who was a third-round pick in 2019, although I thought he was an overdrafted player. And considering Our Lands has him listed as like their third-string guy, which they don't just put these together based off just their own opinions. They try and do some like diving in, whatever. Like these are they have much more knowledge, or should I say, they're not just guessing about these necessarily. Like they're getting information and putting these together from information they gather. And they have re-signed Lorente McCray from Buffalo, who, if I'm not mistaken, started his career out actually with the Jaguars. So maybe they don't draft a linebacker, or don't necessarily need to. Then you've got their secondary, so you've got Trey Herndon, who they really like, and then C.J. Henderson, their first-round pick last year. Then you got Josiah Scott, who was a 4th-round pick last year. Luke Barku, and then Nate Meadors. Those are their outside corners. Or no. Wait a second. Right cornerback, left cornerback. That's weird. So they signed Shaq Griffin in free agency. I expect him to start on the outside, not be in the slot. So they might want to shift this some. Chris Claybrooks and Sidney Jones. So I guess they picked Sidney Jones up. I guess the Eagles finally cut him at some point. I like Sidney Jones still. I feel like he could at least turn into a decent or a pretty good slot corner. Let's look at their safeties here.
So Rudy Ford, not really familiar with him. Andrew Wingard got a starting role last year. Rayshawn Jenkins, Daniel Thomas, who they drafted in the 5th round last year. Jared Wilson, Brandon Watson, Josh Jones, Doug Middleton. I'm not really in love with any of these safeties. Wingard was all right last year, but I think probably the biggest hole in this roster right now is safety. I mean, they need to upgrade at different spots. Like they need more star power, but in terms of like safety is like there's a dearth of talent for the Jags at safety. So, with that being said, let's look at the Jaguars draft capital. So they have picks 1 and 25 in the first round, 33 and 45 in the second round. They got that second round pick last year from trading Yannick Ngakoue to the Vikings, who then traded him to the Ravens for a 3rd round pick. They've got a pick 65. They've got picks 106 and 103. And 130. Both of those 25 and 130 are from the Rams. That's from the Jalen Ramsey trade. They have 2 picks in the 5th round and a pick in the 7th. So they have a lot of ammunition to get better. So obviously at 1, they're drafting Trevor Lawrence and getting their franchise-changing quarterback. And then at 25, there's a lot of argument over where the Jaguars should go because really they can go anywhere. Some people think they should draft a offensive tackle at 25 and kick Cam Robinson or Jawan Taylor into guard to take A.J. Cann's spot, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea. But as much money as you're paying Cam Robinson on that franchise tag, you probably should see whether maybe he's worth keeping as the left tackle moving forward. Because, the Bucks with Donovan Smith, a lot of people were like, man, that extension they gave him, like paying him so much, like that wasn't a good idea. And actually, it turns out he's above and at least an average, but he's a left tackle who can do the job credibly. So, I mean, the Bucks won a Super Bowl with him at left tackle. So it's possible that, Cam Robinson at the same stage jumps up at the same, or, continues to improve like Donovan Smith did or has. I would say at 25, there's an argument you go receiver here. You keep the youth movement at receiver going. You've drafted Chark and Chenault in the 2nd round the last 2 years to get a 1st round guy who complements those guys. I think Rashad Bateman would be an awesome complement to those guys to play kind of like a Keenan Allen type or Jarvis Landry type role. Although I think he's a better outside receiver than Landry. Like he's better on fades and stuff. And he's faster than both of those guys. But Chark gives you that, he's an explosive, long, deep threat, contested catch type. Bateman can make contested catches, but he's great in the intermediate areas. And then Chenault is that catch and run type guy which Chark did a lot of damage on screens last year too, but Chenault playing out of the slot and being kind of a physical catch and run slot type. But they have Marvin Jones, so they don't have to spend a first round pick on a receiver if they don't want to. Which is why a lot of people have them going the route of maybe getting a. Well, I've seen some people just say, or kind of calling Caleb Chase on a wash already and giving them a defensive or like a pass rusher, like an edge rusher, and I think that's stupid. Even though you need a good edge rush rotation, I think they're pretty okay along that front with Josh Allen as their lead guy, Chase on who's still developing. It's just year 2 for the guy. And then you've got Geob Warden, Dwayne Smoot, who are kind of solid pros, like rotational guys. So another place I've seen Christian Barmore or Levi Onwuzurike go to them at 25. Those wouldn't be bad picks. I think I like Barmore better. Like I have him graded a little higher than Onwuzurike. They're a little bit different players. Like Barmore's he's taller and he's heftier. Like he played I think last year at like 6'5", 310, 315 somewhere in there. Whereas Onwuzurike it plays kind of below 300. I think he's like somewhere between 280, 290. I think he's about 6'4". So Onwuzurike kind of fits that Chris Jones kind of mold of a interior pass rusher. Whereas Barmore is much more like Quinnen Williams or maybe Jonathan Allen, like that type, which kind of makes sense. Those other two guys were former Alabama guys. I would say if they're going to go defense at 25, I would say it needs to be an interior pass rusher, like or interior disruptor like Barmore, or which I would say that the Jaguars are probably the earliest team that would pick Barmore. I think that's the earliest he could go, and same with Onwuzurike. So you get Barmore at 25, or depending on which linebackers are on the board, Zaven Collins would be a fit for them. You put him in that linebacker group as kind of like in base packages. You've got Jack, Schobert, and then you've got Collins playing off kind of as a linebacker, like outside of Jihad Ward. Almost like you're running like a 5-2 type front. If and I'll say this, if Trayvon Moehrig is on the board, the safety out of TCU, that's the pick at 25. I think that's the best pick they could possibly make at 25. He's the best all-around safety in this draft. He would immediately improve that position. I think that would be a great get. So the ideal scenario, I think, for the Jaguars is Moehrig to be available. If not, then you're going to have to choose between, I would say, Barmore. Based on their linebacker group, I don't know if I'd go linebacker in the first round. So you'd be going between Barmore and picking a receiver like Rashad Bateman, or a smaller type like Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Kadarius Toney, or maybe you just decide, hey, DJ Chark has worked really well for us. Let's get a second Chark and let's get Terrace Marshall. Although I think Marshall's a little more refined as a player than Chark, and he is a great athlete. I think Chark's a little bit more athletic, but that'd be a really fun wide receiver group. But I would say if there's a team in the first round that needs a free safety more or like the most, I would say it's probably the Jaguars, and Morig is the best pick. So let's say they get Morig at 25. So then you've got 33, 45. This is another spot where you could have Barmore or Onwuzurike right there and take them and feel really comfortable. I'd say if one of them was available at 33, I'd go ahead and take them. And then at 45, and here's another thing. If Morig is off the board at 25, and you say you go with a Barmore, or you take a receiver, or you take an offensive tackle, or whatever, 33, 45 would be spots where like you could target Richie Grant, the free safety out of UCF. And even if you did draft Morig at 25, I would have no problem with the Jaguars just going Morig at 25 and then turning around and getting Richie Grant at 33 or 45. Because Morig is versatile. Richie Grant might be the best like center fielder free safety in this draft. Morig's a great all-around safety. They would give you versatility and the ability to kind of do some interesting stuff. Like trip because of Grant's and Morig's range combined, you could have them setting up and doing things and then flip your coverages every so often and trick them and have Grant come down and play like robber underneath Morig dropping into center field and really trip some quarterbacks out. Some other things the Jaguars could do having like 33 and 45. They could trade down from one of those selections and pick up more picks in the mid rounds. They could also trade down from 25 if, say, Morig's not there and pick up picks in the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds. They could do a lot of stuff because, honestly, the more bites of the apple, in a way, the better. And they do have multiple picks in rounds 1, 2, 4, and 5. So they've got a lot of picks, but if they can kind of move around and consolidate and get more picks in that second, third, fourth round range, those are the teams that really end up owning drafts. Well, and teams with multiple picks in the first round, obviously. So let's see. Like I said, safety's a huge need, and they can target that at multiple spots in rounds 1 and 2. Maybe they don't want to draft a second safety that early. You've got guys like Andre Sisco, Javon Holland, Jamar Johnson, who you could all get between the late second through the fourth rounds. Although this isn't a super deep safety draft. If they wanted to invest more at corner, like their top 3 guys, you've got Henderson, you've got Griffin, you've got Herndon. I like those guys. I kind of like Sidney Jones, but he's still got stuff to prove. Drafting a primarily slot corner would probably be a good idea for them. They could get Asante Samuel probably at 33, maybe even 45, because Mel Kiper had the Titans getting Asante Samuel Jr. in the second round. What was our pick in the second round? 53? So, and I've had Asante Samuel as kind of like potential late first, but probably like first half of the second round type guy. And he would be a great fit, I think, playing slot in the Jaguars' defensive scheme. I mean, he could do a lot of everything, and But I really like. I mean, Asante Samuel is one of my favorite players in this draft. So whoever drafts him, I'm gonna give them I'm gonna give him a good grade, or like, I'm gonna really like the pick. And like I said, interior line, you could get probably one of Barmore or Onwuzurike at one of those picks between 25 and 45. Davian Nixon might be available at pick 65, but I think he'll probably be off the board by then. So, and there were some people, like, at one point in the season, Todd McShay had jumped Nixon up to, like, I think it's 13th or 15th overall prospect. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Nixon, like, if he went to the Jaguars at 45, I wouldn't necessarily knock that pick because Nixon's a really talented interior lineman in this class. There we go. And 45 would also be a good spot to get or to target an offensive lineman. Maybe a Trey Smith out of Tennessee. Or if you're looking interior, or Deontay Brown. Maybe Alex Leatherwood. I've also talked about Jalen Mayfield, Liam Eichenberg. Liam Eichenberg, some people have him as a guard tackle. And some people think Jalen Mayfield could slide into guard. But I don't know. I mean, the Jaguars can kind of go anywhere because I think their biggest issue last year, I think one of their biggest issues was the coaching staff, for starters. And their team, and they do have a lot of really young players. And they had some young players who just were developing slower than I think they should have, potentially. So the Jaguars are just kind of, they have some good pieces, but they could really draft at just about any position. It just also depends on where the money is. And right now, they've got a lot of money and draft picks invested at or along the defensive front. Allen, Bryan, and Chason are their last 3 first-round picks, all defensive linemen. You've got Chark and Chenault, who were both second-round picks at wide receiver. Their last 2 second-round picks are at receiver. And then you just signed Marvin Jones in free agency. And you brought in Philip Dorsett, and you drafted Colin Johnson in like the 5th round last year, and you seem to like him a lot as a rotational receiver. You've invested second-round picks in 2017 in Cam Robinson, and 2019 in Jawan Taylor at offensive tackle. It just depends on where you're looking at adding value. Miles Jack was a former second-round pick, although he's on a second contract. Obviously, Robinson's on the franchise tag, so he's not on a rookie deal anymore. But they could really go anywhere. I know I keep saying that. 65, like I said. So, like I said, Lawrence is going number 1. I'd say take, if he's on the board still, Morig at 25. At 33, I think Richie Grant will probably be available at 45. Might be available at 45. But I like the idea of just going all in on getting an elite safety pair. So drafting like Grant at 33 and just going ahead and getting him. And then at 45, taking a corner or a receiver. Now, maybe 45, you spend another second-round pick on a receiver. In that range, you're probably looking at Maybe Rashad Bateman's falling out of the first round, or Terrace Marshall, one of those two. Maybe Rondale Moore's still on the board because of injury concerns. Or Elijah Moore's still on the board. Because I think at least two of those guys are going in the first round. Is what I would say. Diami Brown might also be might be an interesting pick there at 45 too. He's a little over 6 feet tall, and he plays bigger than his size. He's got really good speed as well. I think he ran in the low 4.4s. He might have been faster than that, but I want to say he ran like the low 4.4s. But he's been one of the best contested catch receivers in college football over the last 2 seasons. I think he's got the most or second most like contested catch wins, or he's like second in contested catch percentage over the past 2 seasons. He's like first or second. And he's good in like all of those metrics. Like number of contested catches, contested catch percentage, yards per contested catch, yards per catch. Like he's a really dynamic threat. So with guys like Chark and Chenault, I would say that Brown would be a really good complement. So maybe he's a pick there at 45. Or you do go interior line and maybe you take Nixon there. Maybe you get Grant at 45, and so at 33 you've got like Barmore or Onwuzurike. 65, let's say you've got those two safeties and you've got an interior lineman at 45. Or out of those picks from 25 to 45. 65, I would say there you would go with like, maybe this is where you go in and get a guard. Maybe Wyatt Davis is still on the board at the top of round 3 because of injury concerns. I think that'd be a really good snag. You wouldn't have to rush him along, but eventually he could take over for AJ Cann or Andrew Norwell. If you decide to cut Norwell when his guaranteed money's up. Another option is you haven't got an interior lineman yet at 65. So maybe here, maybe Davian Nixon is still on the board, maybe he's not. Maybe then you take a J. Tufele. Although really, I'd probably wait till the 4th round. I'd probably wait till 106 maybe to take an interior lineman at that point. So maybe you take a corner at 65. Maybe Campbell or Stokes out of Georgia are available in those spots. Maybe Sean Wade, who I think could be a really good slot corner for a long time in the league, but I think he's limited to being a slot corner in the league. He would probably be a good value at 65. Then 106, 130. Another guy you could get at 65 maybe is Amari Rodgers, who played with Lawrence at Clemson as a slot receiver. If you don't have a receiver by that point. Rodgers is kind of short. Like, he's 5'10", 5'11", but he plays at like 200, 205 pounds or so. He's really thickly built. He's got a strong lower body, a lot like Chenault. He ran like in the low 4.5s at his pro day. He's not like blazingly fast, but he's not slow by any means. He's a really smart route runner. He's got great technique. He's the son of T. Martin, former Tennessee Volunteers quarterback, and one of the best wide receivers coaches over the past 8 years or so in college football. He started with Kentucky, then he went to USC, and all he did at USC was produce a bunch of really elite receivers or receiving talent. Robert Woods, Marquise Lee, Juju Smith-Schuster. I believe he recruited and coached briefly Michael Pittman Jr. I think most of the guys on that team that have come out up through last year were recruited by him. I want to say Amon-Ra St. Brown and Tyler Vaughns, while they may not have been coached by him for maybe more than a year, they at the very least were recruited by him. So, and he has an eye for talent. Well, Amari Rogers is T. Martin's son, and I would imagine that any tips, anything he wanted to know beyond what his coaches at Clemson had, and before he even got to Clemson, I would assume that T. Martin was willing to give him or teach him whatever he knew and whatever Rogers wanted to learn. So Rogers would be a good fit, and he might even be available in round 4, but I feel like he'll probably go round 3. There's some people talking about him like the back end of round 2. I don't know. That's a little rich for me because of the athletic traits, but he is a really good player, and I wouldn't necessarily think it was a bad pick. I just don't know if, especially as deep as his receiver class is, I don't know if the value would be there. It depends on how many receivers are off the board, and even then I'd be like, well, I'd probably wait still. But I like the value of him. I mean, 65, that's the first pick of the 3rd round, so the difference between like 65 and him going at like 58, is it really that big of a difference? But it depends on the other players on the board that you're missing out on, potentially. Of course, in round 4, they've got 2 picks. That would be, I think, a great spot to pick to go interior line and maybe linebacker. If you don't have a receiver by round 4, that would also be a good place and time there around 5. Rogers' teammate, was it Cornelius Powell? Something Powell. He's a very strong, like physically cut kind of receiver. He's not as fast as, say, a DK Metcalf, but he's built very similarly. But he's a 5th round guy. Josh Palmer's a 4th, 5th round guy out of Tennessee. Would be a strong like depth receiver option. So yeah. But really for the Jaguars, I think safety is just a glaring need. You can add at corner. You can add wherever on the D-line, although particularly I would say the interior D-line. You can always add depth along the offensive line. Depth at receiver, or a complementary receiving piece to the guys you already have. I'm not saying they need a quarterback because we know they're drafting Trevor Lawrence at round 1, and I liked Gardner Minshew anyway, but I mean, I'd be crazy to not start or pick Trevor Lawrence even if I had, even as much as I like Gardner Minshew. So with that, we're going to move on to... I'm going to do things different today because I can... Well, I'm going to end with the Titans anyway, but Houston doesn't have draft picks, but I'm going to touch on them briefly because... I went the wrong way. We'll end with the Colts and then the Titans. Take a minute. Hopefully by Monday, I will be over this crud. I've been, I think, sitting kind of off frame here. There we go. Let's see. So the Texans, their first pick is not till pick 67 of the 3rd round because of the Laramie Tunsil trade. But they do have a lot of picks in the later rounds. They've got 2 picks in the 5th round. They've got 1, 2, 3 picks in the 6th round.
For Houston, they basically have needs everywhere. I'm not even going to look at their roster. Well, I guess I not necessarily lied, but I changed my mind. I'm moving forward with the fact that Watson's going to be on their roster because no one's going to trade for him right now, nor should they. When it comes to wide receiver, they've got Brandon Cooks. They've got Randall Cobb. They still have Kiki Kuti. They brought in Alex Arison from Cincinnati. They signed Andre Roberts. They have last year's 5th-round pick, Isaiah Coultier. They signed Chris Moore, who was a former mid-round pick by the Ravens. They signed Chris Conley out of Jacksonville, and the fact they've got him like as the 8th receiver on their depth chart instead of where Roberts is, like he's a better receiver than Roberts, personally, I think. Oh, well, I can't because an ad's playing. And then and then they also brought in Dante Moncrief. They don't need to draft a receiver, regardless, with any of their picks, or at least not like their earlier picks. In terms of offensive line, they put a lot of money into the offensive line. Well, I say money. They put a lot of resources. They traded for Marcus Cannon. They traded for Laramie Tunsil in 2019. They drafted Titus Howard and Max Sharping in the first and second rounds of 2019. Howard was a bit of a reach. They could potentially get... I don't really know much about Cobrel or Cole Cabral. But they did sign Justin Britt this year to compete at center. One of them will win the starting job, I'm sure. They've got Justin McCray, who they signed from Atlanta, who's kind of a... Actually, I'm going to look him up real quick because I want to make sure I know. Okay, I thought so. Yeah, out of Central Florida. Where was he drafted? Current team. Wait, no, that says Tennessee free agent. $14 CFA. So he was some kind of free agent. Yeah, so that's wrong. So anyway, now I've got to go over here and crap. Oh, let's see when I can skip this ad. Or if it'll let me. Anyway, let's just get back to this. So, they could maybe... Let's see. Their backup tackle's Roderick Johnson. That's not terrible. And they drafted Charlie Heck in the 4th round last year to be... or to develop. So... They really don't need to spend any money or spend a draft pick or like an early pick on an offensive lineman. Let's see. At tight end, you've got Jordan Akins. Pharaoh Brown is okay. You've got 3rd round pick in 2019, Kahale Waring, who Mel Kiper was a huge fan of. They traded for Ryan Izzo. They have Paul Queensbury.
I don't know who Anthony Auclair is, but I don't know if I think they need to prioritize defense over everything this year. The running back room, they brought in Mark Ingram and Philip Lindsay. They've got Philip Lindsay listed as the third string guy. By the end of the season, Mark Ingram looked like he was completely broken down as a running back. David Johnson, I'm just not even going to get into it. Like, Philip Lindsay's the best running back there. So, Houston better hope. Houston fans better hope that Lindsay isn't their third string back. You look on, it's like they no longer have J.J. Watt. Hopefully Ross Blacklock stops being an idiot long enough to be a good football player. They brought in Malik Collins. Their other starter is Charles Omahelu or Omenlu. He was a 5th-round pick in 2019. They signed Derek Rivers as an undrafted, as an unrestricted free agent, which I believe Rivers originally was drafted by either New England or Baltimore. I think it was New England, maybe. I think Rivers I think he was from Houston. And I guess he ended up on the Rams last year. So, but he's more of an edge rusher. Well, at least he started off. Maybe he's bulked up. But he'd be kind of light for their 3-4 defensive end role. They brought in Jaleel Johnson from Minnesota, who was so good last year. That was a terrible run defense last year. Duke Ejiofor, 6th round, 2018. Vincent Taylor. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. Brandon Dunn. They could definitely use some improvements on the interior defensive line. Let's look at their edge guys. Whitney Mercilus is still there. Solid. Love Zach Cunningham. They traded Bernardrick McKinney for... I'm looking for him. Shaq Lawson, who they have penciled in as the jack in their defense, with Jonathan Grenard, who they drafted in the 3rd round last year, as the backup at that spot. I'm wondering if the jack is if that's what J.J. Watt played, or I need to look into that. They signed Kamu Grugier Hill, whatever. Kamu Hill from Miami. I think that was an okay pickup. They've got Christian Kirksey, who they brought in, who should provide good depth if he's healthy. At that position, they signed Kevin Pierre-Louis from Washington. I think that was actually a really underrated signing. He might end up the starter over Hill there. And then Tay Davis, Joe Thomas, who's a good special teams player. And then Hardy Nickerson Jr. from Minnesota. I'd say they probably don't need to touch middle linebacker just because of what else they need elsewhere. So they brought they've retained Vernon Hargraves at corner. They've got John Reed, who was a 4th-round pick last year, listed as a slot corner. Wait. Ronald Darby. I thought Ronald Darby was signed by Denver. That doesn't make what? So some of this stuff may not be updated. Yeah, because that doesn't make sense. Oh, that's Bradley Roby. I'm an idiot. Okay, so Bradley Roby's still there. I don't know why I read him as Ronald Darby, Blonde Man. I'll tell you why it was why the Blind Man did that. Because they have the last name listed before the first name, and I just I saw the R and the letters, and I'm like, oh, Ronald Darby, but no, Bradley Roby. Okay, that makes sense. They also signed Desmond King, which is a shocker to me. They've got Desmond King as like their fourth corner here. Like I would imagine he would be their starting slot corner or one of their starters on the outside, one of the two. Although Desmond is definitely better in the slot, and he also can start at safety. They do like Justin Reed, and they've apparently moved I guess they're moving Lonnie Johnson to safety from corner. He was kind of a long, like 6'2" corner out of Kentucky. I would say he would improve the coverage at strong safety, though. I would think. They've got Terrence Brooks, Travier Thomas. Not familiar with him, really. Let's see. Oh, Terrence Brooks, that's a safety, not a corner, my bad. Terrence Brooks. Terrence Mitchell. So they signed Terrence Mitchell from Cleveland at corner. He was pretty good in 2019. Eric Murray. They have a ton of corners right now. Most of these guys, half these guys aren't going to make the roster for sure. But in terms of their five deep, not bad. Roby, Hargraves. I like King way better. I like Mitchell, I think, better than Hargraves. Reed. Johnson could play inside or could play corner as well. Jonathan Owens. King gives them depth at safety as well, so. But they probably could use a corner. So let's look at what they got. I would say for Houston, third round. I would draft if Davian Nixon's available at 67, you run and you sprint and you take him. If he's not there, take, if he's available, Tyler Shelvin, a nose tackle. That'll move Blacklock out to either your 3 technique or your 5 technique. Because they play kind of a hybrid front there, or at least they have historically. If neither of those guys are available, maybe you take a corner, Taylor out of Washington. Maybe Campbell or Stokes is still available from Georgia. Maybe you take an interior. Maybe you take an offensive lineman. Then like round 4, 109. Maybe Trey Brown of Oklahoma still available at corner. If not that, Jamar Johnson of Indiana at safety could still be available. I think that would be a solid pick. Round 5. Rounds 5 and 6, you've got a bunch of picks here. Maybe DJ Daniels, slot corner out of Georgia, who didn't have a great 40 or whatever. Maybe he's still available in round 5, but I don't know if he'll even be available by 147, 158. That might be pushing it. Now, maybe Johnson, maybe you didn't take him at 109, but maybe he's still available in round 5. But once again, I don't know. You're getting it in here, maybe in round 5, you're able to get like maybe Obi Melifonwu's younger brother, Ifedi Melifonwu. Maybe he's still available in the 5th round. But he played corner. I think he played mostly corner at Syracuse. Although I think I like him better as a free safety. Maybe you draft a running back because David Johnson and Mark Ingram are both going to break down this season. Maybe you take them in the 6th round. I mean, Houston's in a tough spot. Like, once you get that far down the board, I mean, most players are crapshoots. Maybe you're able to get, I don't know. You might be able to get a good, like, inside backer, like KJ Britt might be available, or KJ, I don't think is right. Something Britt out of Auburn might be available in round 5. Yeah. So let's move to Indy. Indy picks at 21. Well, not that. That. So we'll take a look at Indianapolis's depth chart. Boom. So I don't know if I can't remember if they've officially re-signed Ty or not in Indy. I think a lot of people expect him to if he hasn't. If they did finally re-sign him or whatever, I must have missed it. But I've been under the assumption that Hilton will be back. You got Michael Pittman Jr., who they drafted in the 2nd round, who I'm really high on. Paris Campbell started off the season really hot before his ACL injury. I think he'll come back really strong. Zach Pascal is a really, really solid receiver. Desmond Patman was really solid for them last year. Like, if he's your 5th best receiver, that's actually pretty good. You've got J.J. Nelson as a speed threat, along with Paris Campbell. You've got Courtney Davis out of Texas A&M and Gary Jennings out of West Virginia, who are they're still relatively young receivers. I think Courtney Davis was a rookie last year that a lot of people were kind of high on as a late-round guy. Gary Jennings, the Seahawks originally drafted, I think, and I really liked him as a potential, like, rotational receiver. I'm so tired of blowing my nose, especially on stream. So, I think if they brought back T.Y. Hilton, they're fine at receiver for this year. They still could draft one for the future. So right now, they've got Sam Tevy, who they signed from the Chargers, penciled in at left tackle. I don't think that's going to stand and stay that way. You got Quentin Nelson at left guard, Ryan Kelly at center, Mark Glowinski at right guard, and Braden Smith at right tackle. You've got a solid rest of your line is like really good. Julian Davenport, they signed from Miami. Decent backup swing tackle. Joey Hunt's a nice backup center. They drafted Danny Pinter in the 5th round last year. So he's locked in as a backup on this roster. Let's see, Will Holden. None of these guys like third string and beyond really matter. Cedric O'Donnell, who once they draft, I think they're going to draft a tackle in the first 2 rounds. I think they should in the first. He'll be kicked down to like a third string role, so he's not going to matter either. So then you're going to tight end. You got Mo Alley Cox, who's been really good for them. You've got Jack Doyle. That's a really nice like top 2. You got Noah Togiai, who I believe is Joe Togiai's like older brother or something like that. But I don't think he's of much relevance necessarily. You got Andrew Vollert, Jordan Thomas, Farrod Green. They might draft or sign an undrafted tight end to compete with those guys. But they don't necessarily have to draft a tight end. They, of course, traded for Carson Wentz over the offseason, so you've got him with Jacob Eason behind him. And I don't know who Jalen Morton is. Never heard of him, so he's their third-string quarterback. They've got, and then at running back, you've got Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines, Marlon Mack is still, I guess, on Indianapolis. I'm guessing it's just because he hadn't signed anywhere. Because I don't think Mack's still on the team. Jordan Wilkins is, though, still on the team. Paul Perkins is far down on the depth chart. They don't necessarily... It's like, I would probably draft a running back late, but I wouldn't draft one early because Jonathan Taylor's your bell cow. Nyheim Hines is definitely your second back for sure. So, from there, let's look at the defense. So, your starting defensive interior, or your starting defensive line, you've got Tyquan Lewis, who I really like. DeForest Buckner, they signed him, or they traded for him last year, signed him to an extension. One of the best interior disruptors in the league. They like Grover Stewart as a nose. He just plugs space. Isaac Rochelle, not super actually familiar with him. I don't know if he was on the team last year. It says, I can't remember what R means, if that was like a... Cat, you are sitting on my foot now. Guess they have like analysis that they do. Well, anyway, I don't really know a lot about Isaac Rochelle. You have 2018 second round pick Kamoko Toure, who I was a big fan of that year. Who's also on the edge. 2019 second round pick Big Banogu, who's one of my buddy Hayden's favorite players at TCU. Huge fan of him. But he's dealt with injuries and hasn't been super productive. Alquanim Muhammad, he's not really been anything in the league. And then Cameron Klein, not really notable either. So they've got a decent amount invested in edge. Also defensive tackle, you've got behind the guys I've already named, Andrew Brown, who was waived by Houston. Their 6th round pick last year, Robert Windsor. Taylor Stallworth, who was originally drafted, I believe, by New Orleans, but as an end. And then Chris Williams, not super familiar with him either. I really like their. Now, I will say, I really love their linebackers. Of course, Bobby Franklin. Um, Bobby Franklin. Sorry, Bobby Okereke or Okereke out of Stanford. I thought he was underdrafted in 2019. Well, I say underdrafted. Like he was great value in the third round. I thought he was a second round guy personally. He was one of my favorite linebackers in that draft. Darius Leonard, who was one of the best values in the draft in recent years. He's been a stud outside linebacker that they got in the second round out of a small school. Easily should have, honestly, the way he's played, he easily should have been a first rounder. Beyond that, you have last year's seventh round pick Zaire Franklin, who's been real or who has been who was really good last year, penciled in to start. Wait a second, they've got Zaire Franklin listed on the depth chart twice. That's okay. Matthew Adams, who was also a seventh round pick in 2018, is on here. Jordan Glasgow, who was one of my favorite late round guys last year in the sixth round on their depth chart. EJ Speed, and then Sky Moore, who I loved. He played against my Vols in college with South Carolina, and he was so good in college. He's had some injury issues and stuff. I feel like he's a really good depth linebacker option, though. You get to the corners, Rock Ya-Sin, he's been okay. Xavier Rhodes, who I believe they brought back for this year, was really good. Kenny Moore, one of the best slot corners in the league. You got Isaiah Rodgers, who they drafted in the sixth round last year. Kari Willis, who was a fourth round pick in 2019. Oh, wait, no. He's safety. I didn't go up far enough. There we go. Anthony Chesley. Let's see. Will Shepard. Nick Nelson, who they brought in. Corners is definitely somewhere they should target in this draft. When it comes to safeties, Julian Blackman was a really good pick last year in the third round. He's a good starting safety. Kari Willis, they drafted in the fourth round 2019. Solid, backup option. Ibrahim Campbell, kind of more of a special teamer to me. George Odom was actually pretty good for him last year, but they could probably upgrade at the free safety spot. Teamer. Sean Davis is apparently a depth option on the team, as is Marvell Tell, who's a fifth rounder by them in 2019. There are a lot of people who believe Tell had like borderline first round talent, but he just never, but he was just really inconsistent at USC. I guess he's not really had a chance to get it going in the NFL. They have some depth at safety, but they could definitely draft a guy or justify drafting a guy. I blow my nose again. Oh goodness, I hate this. So, now that we've gone through the roster, let's look at their picks. So at 21 overall, I think they should go tackle. And I've talked about Tevin Jenkins a lot. I think the Dolphins should draft him. I think the Raiders would be smart for them to draft him. I'm seeing a lot of mocks though that kind of have some of the tackles sliding down the board. Like I think it was Kuiper's latest mock had, and I've seen several that have Slater from Northwestern sliding all the way down. Rashawn Slater dropping all the way down to the Chargers at 13. If that happens, I could easily see a scenario where Darisaw or Jenkins are available here at 21, and the Colts should jump on that immediately. And plug those guys into that left tackle spot. Like, if Darisaw was available here to the Colts at 21, that, like, it would be the ideal scenario for them. But that's what I'm saying is, even if some people would consider a value reach, so even if maybe those guys somehow are both off the board at that point, which I say somehow, that easily could happen, because the Redskins could take a left tackle at 19, the Bears could take a left tackle at 20, the Raiders and Dolphins, like 17, 18, 19, 20, all are guys who could target tackle. The Chargers at 13 need to take a tackle. There's a number of teams that could take tackles before that. Carolina. Miami could take Sewell at 6 instead of taking, and then take something else at 18. They could take like a Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts at 6 and then take a tackle at 18. It just depends. The Bengals could take a tackle at 5, which would probably be a pick later in the first, but maybe it's a pick at the top of the second. So, like, you look at all the picks the Jaguars have. Maybe they package a couple picks to move up from 25 to 21 to target a specific player that they really, really love. And so that then puts the Colts with, now they're picking at 25 and they've got some extra picks, so maybe you feel a little better at maybe reaching for, or to some people, reaching for a Jalen Mayfield or a Liam Eichenberg or a Sam Cosmi. Some people have him as a late first guy or a second half of the first guy. Like, I know Marcus Whitman for a bit had Sam Cosmi as like his third tackle. Had him above Darisaw and Jenkins. So, but I think 21, they have to go tackle. If they don't, they've got to go by 20 or by 54. But I don't know how great I feel. I'd feel better. I don't know how great I feel about, hoping one of Mayfield, Cosmi, Eichenberg, Radens are available at 54. Because after that, I might be looking at Alex Leatherwood, and I'm not sure whether he's a guard or a tackle. And we don't want a repeat of what happened to Andrew Luck that cost our organization this guy, because the previous regime didn't value the offensive line enough to put any quality offensive lineman on the field other than Anthony Costanzo. Anthony Costanzo's now retired. We brought in Carson Wentz, who's had some injury issues. Fractured back, torn ACL. We've got to protect this guy. So, I say go tackle with your first pick. Then at 54, you come back, and I would say address the corner position with a Kelvin Joseph, a Eric Stokes, a Tyson Campbell, and Elijah Molden, Like, get a developmental outside corner. You don't have a third round pick, which that would be the benefit of trading down from 21. Would be maybe picking up a third rounder. Like I said, you got the Jaguars, which a lot of people hate to trade within division, but if you can move back 4 spots and maybe pick up like the 65th pick and get yourself the first third round pick, that would be huge. Another thing you could do at 54 is, yes, you've spent your last 2 second-round picks on wide receivers, but you could go for another receiver, someone to replace like T.Y. Hilton long-term. You've got a big-bodied receiver in Pittman. You've got kind of a speedy slot type in Paris Campbell. You could get another speed demon type player, like maybe it's a little early, which, like I said, Rondale Moore could fall because of injury concerns. He'd be a really good fit, and he's from the state, like went to Purdue. He wouldn't be going far to go to Indianapolis. Another option, some people might think it's a little high, but I really like Jalen Darden. I like his value better in the third round, but you don't have a third. Diami Brown would be a good pick at 54 as a contested catch kind of monster who's a little faster than Pittman. He gives you a little more deep threat than Pittman. But I kind of like their receiver group, so I would say don't worry about receiver. So I would say like corner. Maybe you use another second round pick on a pass rusher. Maybe you get a Ronnie Perkins or a Joe Tryon type. I know I'm bringing up the same names over and over again for all these teams, but depending on where you decide to target different positions, the same guys are going to be on the boards in the same rounds for this, or should I say, these guys have different ranges that they're going to fall in. So, depending on what teams target where, guys are going to be available for them to target that need at different spots. Like I keep saying, like I think the Colts go tackle in round 1. I think they should. If they don't, then they're going to end up down at 54, and they're going to have a different names to pick from. Which means at 21, they'll have different players to pick from. Like, say, if they decide to go receiver and they decide they want a guy they think can be a real, like, number 1 threat receiver, Terrace Marshall or Rashad Bateman, but I would say, like, Terrace Marshall would be the pick at 21 if you're looking for, like, a big, fast downfield receiver. Or if they're looking for a dynamic, or a dynamic playmaker type, Kadarius Toney of Florida at 21. But if they go offensive tackle, then they're going to be picking at 54. Those guys probably aren't going to be on the board by 54, I would say. So, anyway. So, like I said, I think offensive tackle round 1. I think in the second round, corner is probably the biggest need area on the roster after left tackle. Then in the late rounds, you can decide whether you want to pick a depth running back or not. Add a developmental pass rusher. Maybe Jackson. I can't remember his first name, but Jackson out of Coastal Carolina. He was basically the best player on Coastal Carolina's defense, the leader of that defense last year. He should be able to be gotten on day 3, round 4 or 5. You might be able to get Quincy Roche out of Miami in round 4 at pick 127. It's possible. And maybe Chris Rumpf of Duke could be available in round 4. Like I said, I really like the idea of them swapping with someone late in the first round, moving back and getting some picks in the middle rounds. But I'm always a proponent for trading down, typically. But the Colts have a really strong roster. And with Carson Wentz at quarterback, I'm going to say you pair him with Frank Reich, you put him behind a offensive line that's not injured to heck, with receivers who aren't injured to heck. Although, Paris Campbell's had some issues with that. But you just give him a consistent supporting cast around him that is a consistent and good supporting cast around him and play better defense than Philly did. And I think, the Colts should be able to contend for the AFC South crown. With that being said, we're going to get into my team, the Tennessee Titans, and we're going to wrap up our draft primer series. I wish my voice was a little more dynamic, but I'm just so stuffed up, and ugh. But I'll try to be as energetic as possible here. So, with Corey Davis being gone, the Titans receiving group, A.J. Brown is our number 1. We brought in Josh Reynolds, who profiles as our slot receiver. And our third best receiver is Nick Westbrook. Ickeny? What? We'll just say Nick Westbrook. I don't even really know who he is. Beyond that, we've got Rashad Davis, Cameron Batson, who's been on the team for several years, Mason Kinsey, Chester Rogers, who used to be on the Colts, Cody Hollister, and Marcus Johnson. I think wide receiver is one of our biggest needs in this draft. And I would like that to be what we target in round 2. Our offensive line's really good. Taylor Lewan he'll be back healthy this year. He's one of the top left tackles in the league. Roger Saffold has been one of the most consistently great guards in the league. Ben Jones is a great center. Nate Davis is going into year 3. He improved last year. I think he's at least a solid option at right guard. And right now we've got Kendall Lamb as penciled in as our starting right tackle. I'm guessing, did we cut Dennis Kelly? I must have missed that. Because I kind of expected him to be our penciled as our starting right tackle. So we did only guarantee the first year of that contract, so that saved us $7 million on the cap this year. Behind him, we've got Brandon Kemp. We have Daniel Murray. David Queensbury's a solid interior line, backup interior lineman. Aaron Brewer. Our offensive line was pretty good last year, so Isaiah Wilson was obviously supposed to be our right tackle of the future. That didn't work out. And I don't think an NFL career is going to work out for him at all in the future because he just doesn't seem to get it. At tight end, I'm super bummed we lost Jonnu Smith, but we do have Ferguson back. We brought Jeff Swain back. We brought in Jared Pinkney, former Vandy guy, who's a solid depth tight end. But tight end is a position I would like us to look at in the draft and get a higher upside guy than those guys we have in the back, a real athletic tight end like Jonnu Smith. Ryan Tannehill, we have a really good starting quarterback. Our backups are Logan Woodside, and we brought in Deshaun Kaiser. Which Kaiser actually gives us a little more upside than Woodside at backup, but the coaching staff really seems to like Woodside. We have the most dominant running back in the NFL in Derrick Henry. Jerry McNichols I really liked him when he was coming out of the draft. I don't know why he wasn't more valued, but he got to us last year. He was a great backup running back. We have Kari Blossomgame, who's our fullback, and then we drafted Darrington Evans in the 3rd round last year. He'll be our third down back. We signed Donta Foreman, which is actually kind of interesting. He's had some injury issues. I don't know if he's if he is as explosive as he used to be, but in a way he gives us kind of a Derrick Henry-ish type running back as a backup. I don't know if he'll make the final 53 though, because I feel like Henry, McNichols, Evans, and Blossom Game will be the guys on our 53. From there, we signed Danico Autry from Indianapolis this offseason. I thought that was a great get. He's a really good starter. We seem to have Dalen Mack penciled in as our nose tackle. He's young, he's big, he's strong. I believe he's from A&M, if I remember correctly. Jeffrey Simmons, who looked great in year 2. I'm really excited about him this year. Another year removed from that ACL injury. And then Murrickson was a 5th-round pick last year. The team, or the coaching staff, loves Murrickson. We're probably going to have, it seems like we're going to keep a short D-line rotation, which isn't my favorite, but whatever. And then there's Tessier Tart. I would like to see us draft, and I expect us to draft a interior line or a defensive lineman in the draft. Sorry, I had to blow my nose again. Hopefully that'll be the last time to stream. I really love that we were able to get, like I said, I really want us to draft a defensive lineman or like an interior defensive lineman on day 3 for depth. We upgraded our pass rush this offseason, signing Bud Dupree. He's coming off a big injury, but I think he'll be fine. He fits what we want in our scheme, and he's more of a power rusher, a speed to power rusher, which is a little bit of a contrast from Harold Landry, which I like. We were able to get Jayon Brown back on a really good bargain 1-year deal for a quality coverage linebacker. Hopefully in year 4, Rashaan Evans will live up to the hype. Behind him, we've got David Long Jr., who is a solid rotation backer. I really like him. Jan Johnson, he's a special teamer, really. As is Tazar Skipper. Our coaching staff has really liked Derek Robertson as a rotation rusher. Olasunkami Adeniyi. I don't know how you pronounce that. Never heard of him. We have Nate Orchard on the roster, which I love. Orchard is actually a solid backup pass rusher. Rotation rusher. I think that's good. Wyatt Ray, Julian Taylor hasn't done anything in his career. We still need to draft edge guy, but we don't necessarily need to do it in the first round anymore. Then we come to what I think is our biggest need, which is corner. So Chris Jackson was a 7th-round pick last year. They are slating him in as a starter right now. We signed Janoris Jenkins. He looks like he's going to start, which that would make sense. Breon Borders was really good for us last year. They're slotting him in as our nickel. I'm okay with that. We've got a really good, we've got a great safety group. I'm kind of surprised they've got Crookshank ahead of Hooker on the depth chart, but we got Kevin Beard, who is one of the best free safeties in the league, and he's a versatile safety. Crookshank and Hooker can both play in the slot too. So we have great versatility at safety. Kareem Orr is a really good special teams player. I would say though, and then like our depth at corner, we got Christian Fulton. Fulton's gonna start this year. He was better than Jackson last year. That's kind of weird. And then we've signed Kevin Johnson as a veteran at corner. But we don't have we have 5 listed corners on the roster right now. We're going to draft one, and we should probably draft one high. So now we're going to get into what I think we should draft. So, went too far. So, we got a pretty nice 3rd round comp pick. So we have 2 3rd rounders, 4 picks in the top 100. I think at 22 overall, we can go one of 3 directions. And I'd be disappointed if we went, well, really we could go one of 4 directions because no one's talking about doing this. But I think we could draft an offensive tackle at 22. If Tevin Jenkins was on the board, I'd be totally comfortable with us taking him and having a beastly tackle tandem. Like Jenkins and Lewan. Jenkins is so much like Lewan, it's not funny, actually. So I would be totally cool with that. But I doubt that. I doubt we do that. I doubt we spend another 1st rounder on a tackle. But maybe we do. It depends on who's available. More likely, I say corner or receiver is going to be the choice at 22. Greg Newsome looks like he'll fall like right in this range. I think Greg Newsome out of Northwestern would be great for us. He's over 6 feet tall. He ran like a 4.36 or a 4.38 40. I think it was a 4.36. Sorry. And I think he'd be a great fit for our scheme. If Caleb Farley fell to 22 because of the back injury concerns, that would be great. There's a period of time where it looked like J.C. Horn wasn't going to go top 20 before his pro day. And I was thinking maybe we could get J.C. Horn. That's the other position the Colts could target. So there is that. And it's possible the Bears could target a corner, the Redskins could. There's a number of things, but it just depends. But I would love to see Newsome, and I'd be okay with Asante Samuel at 22. I love Samuel. At the worst, he would be an elite slot corner, but I think he could be a great outside corner too. So, and it's not like Janoris Jenkins is really that tall either. So, and Asante Samuel's dad was awesome. Should be in the Hall of Fame. If we don't go corner, if we go receiver at 22, Mel Kiper had us taking Elijah Moore. I'd be okay with us actually moving back. If like someone wanted to trade up specifically for something to move ahead of another team that had certain needs, I would be okay with us trading down. Depending on what we got and how far down we were moving. But if we could get, like I said, Mel Kiper had Elijah Moore to us at 22. I think he'd be a great fit. We could use a slot type receiver, which most people would say Josh Reynolds is. You could play him, though, on the outside. But I think Elijah Moore could play on the outside some too. But Moore is a really dynamic player. I'd be okay with Rondo Moore. Kadarius Toney would be a great get at this point. But I think I like the idea of Josh Reynolds more in the slot. And I think I would like to maybe put Rashad Bateman or Terrace Marshall on this team at 22. Guys who can make contested catches downfield if we were going receiver here. Personally, I would prefer to go corner. And I might even prefer to go tackle if the right guy is available at 22. But I would probably either take a corner or trade down. The other option would be pass rusher, which if we could get Jalen Phillips at 22, which it seems like he's going to go in the 20s because of some concerns about his concussion problems earlier in his college career. But he is the best pass rusher in this draft. And I think he would be a great fit for us long term. But I'm saying Newsome's the pick at 22. Then at 53, then maybe target a receiver. Like I said, maybe Rondale Moore is fallen because of durability concerns. You've got Dyami Brown, and Dyami Brown would be an awesome fit. I want to say that I've seen some people with Nico Collins going here, which would be all right. Although I'd feel more comfortable with him in the 3rd round if I was a team. But 53, I would like to see either a receiver or a pass rusher. So, which at 53, Joe Tryon would be my guy. Really, really like him. Or Joseph Asai. If Joseph Asai somehow was able to fall to like 53, actually, he would be my first choice. I'd take him over Tryon. But those guys would be really good fits. Ronnie Perkins would work. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable with them taking the leap on developing Jason Oweh because he is so raw. But he does have immense physical talents. But those would be kind of my targets at 53 for a pass rusher. At 85, if we haven't gone receiver yet, if Nico Collins was on the board, I'd be super, super okay with Nico Collins. Actually, I think that'd be a great value at 85. If he's off the board, if say a guy like Amari Rodgers on the board, I would like that. I know a lot of people have Sage Surratt in this range. I wouldn't touch him. I don't think he's going to pan out in the league, period. If Seth Williams were on the board at 85, and I might even consider him at 53, but Seth Williams in the 3rd round would be a great value. And maybe we had to package a couple of our picks to move up in the 3rd round to target, a receiver, a certain player. That would be great. If we've gone receiver and corner already, then we wouldn't have to worry about those positions in the 3rd. Some cornerback options at 53, like I keep mentioning, like Tyson Campbell, Kelvin Joseph, Elijah Molden. Mel Kiper has Asante Samuel falling to us at 53. That would be incredible. He had us going Elijah Moore 22 and Samuel at 53. It's funny because I could see either of those players going at either of those spots, to be honest. So, but there's cornerback value at 22. There's quarterback value at 53. Like there will be. And there might be some at 85. Like if we think we've got outside guys, DJ Daniel at like 85 or 100. Taylor out of Washington could be an outside option who could still be on the board at 85 or 100. Even as fast as he is, Eric Stokes, with kind of how tight his hips are in coverage, like he's not as flexible and he doesn't have as good a change of direction as some other corners in this draft. He could be available at 85. Trey Brown at 85 or 100. I would really like. In terms of pass rushers at that stage, I feel like Patrick Jones will be gone. I feel like Emerson Smith will probably be gone. Cam Sample. Rashad Weaver doesn't really fit our scheme necessarily. Third round would be, or 85-100 be a good spot for us to maybe target a guy to develop into a starter on the defensive interior long term, or a guy who would be a great rotation type, like Jay Tulafele, Joe Togiai, or if we wanted to get a nose tackle, like somewhere rounds 3, 4, 5, there are a lot of options for nose tackles. Like Bo Hanna out of Kentucky in like round 4 or 5 would be an awesome pick. So, but yeah, our biggest needs are our glaring needs are we need to replace Corey Davis, and I don't think that replacement's on the roster right now. We need to, and I haven't even gotten to tight end, which I just don't think with the other needs. I think tight end would be something we need to pick at maybe 100 or 126. Like if Trey McKitty was available in round 4, the tight end from Georgia, super athletic but not heavily used. He reminds me there's a lot of things that remind me of Jonnu Smith athletically, but he'd be a really good playmaker. If Hunter Long's available at 85, he'd be a really good pick as an all-around type tight end. But we'll see. In the late rounds, like I said, really once we've addressed like getting a corner, a receiver, and a pass rusher, like a developmental pass rusher, those are really our 3 biggest needs. Our secondary needs are a playmaking tight end, or at the very least, like a red zone threat tight end, maybe more of a red zone threat receiver, or like a big bodied receiver, which there are a number of those guys like late in the draft. That receiver, I keep forgetting his name, out of Stanford. Oh, I didn't mute. If he could be available at pick 126, I might even consider him at pick 100. That guy has crazy potential in like the red zone, contested catches, really great athlete. He reminds a lot of people of last year's Steelers, I think second rounder Chase Claypool. But we need it's like I would say a developmental tight end, like an athletic tight end / red zone kind of monster type. We could take 2 receivers in this draft out of our picks. One of them later though. Because we just need some kind of playmaking receiver, period. Although I'm thinking more, I would like kind of a bigger bodied guy, but I'd be totally cool with like Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, someone like that, like a playmaking with a ball in their hands type. Like we have that with AJ Brown, but he's more of a strong guy. Getting someone who's more agile would work. But I'd like one of each of those kind of smaller type, bigger type receivers. Like I said, corner, defensive end, then tight end. Potentially depth and then depth along defensive and offensive lines is always important. And for me, I would say like low key offensive tackle is a need for us right now. So but yeah. So that's it. That's kind of my draft primers, like my thoughts team by team. What I'll do for over the next couple weeks as we work up to the draft, which is 2 weeks away. So not next Thursday, but the Thursday after. I might be streaming, or I might decide to stream during the draft next Thursday. If not, I'll probably be watching Marcus Whitman's stream or stream of the draft. That franchise guy on YouTube. It just depends. So, and I might try and get it worked up to where maybe I can have or be like on Discord and have my buddies on Discord and us actually have like our own draft show. So we'll see. I just got to work that out. But with that being said, thank you. Thank you for tuning in today to BlindEyeLive. I appreciate it. If you're watching this on the archive as a podcast, I appreciate that as well. If you like the show, please drop a like. Please comment. I read the comments. If you want more of the show, please hit subscribe and then hit the bell notification next to subscribe. Flip it to all so you never miss an upload or, well, at this point I'm just streaming, but like I said, or I've said in the past, might start doing video content as well as I learn how to edit or just do things perfect. Either way. But yeah, so I appreciate it. And please share with your friends because that'll help me more than just throwing something on social media. Well, actually, that would help too. But, I'm not at the level yet where I'm like, oh yeah, please share me on or my crappy show with no viewers on your social media for people to laugh at me and you. But anyway, thank you. I hope y'all have